Hi, welcome to the new math of e-commerce. I'm Rob Neumann. I'm the Chief Solutions Officer of CSS Commerce. I have with me Jason Nyhus. He is the President and General Manager of Shopware in the United States. And thank you so much for joining, Jason. And I'm really looking forward to what we have to talk about today, which is revisiting the heyday of e-commerce. You want to chip in here, Jason? Introduce and let's get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rob, for having me. I will say this is an exciting topic because it's not your kind of general run-of-the-mill webinar. We're going to dig into a little bit of the past that we've both lived through and what we saw and how it really has led us to where we are today. Maybe speak a little bit about that, and then also where the market is going. So it'll be a pretty fun conversation, a little bit of a pretty good back and forth.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. And the main reason is things have changed, right? One of the reasons I'm really happy to have you on is Shopware is part of that change in that it is the most current in that it's the most recent rewritten from zero, built back up e-commerce platform, popular e-commerce platform in the world today. So let's take a look backwards as how things used to be. So Jason, why don't you lead off with Gartner?
Yeah, let's do it. So obviously, to give ourselves some credibility, we've both been doing e-commerce for a long time. I have been doing it since the year 2000, and a lot has changed. And I go back to the market back in 2000, and I think it was 16, which is really an important date in history in e-commerce. And this was around the time where e-commerce was supposed to go big software. Up until that time, e-commerce was done by a bunch of mid-market companies who were helping large companies and small go online and do e-commerce. And around 2016, you had Demandware being acquired by Salesforce. You had Oracle, who had acquired ATG. You'd had SAP, who acquired Hybris. IBM acquired WebSphere. And a little company called Digital River, who was my employer, in the upper right as leaders in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Oh, and Adobe acquired Magento, if I didn't say. And so what happened in this, this is a multi-year journey, but around that time is when the world started to say, okay, big software is now going to be playing in e-commerce. It's going to be more enterprise class, better security, better scalability, probably higher pricing. And so the Gartner Magic Quadrant of that era is a really good tell as to where everybody thought it was going. And on that same Gartner Magic Quadrant, you can see in the bottom left are two little companies at the time. One was called Shopify and the other was BigCommerce as niche players. And there is nothing wrong with being a niche provider on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. It just means you're frankly focused. But what really happened as we fast forward in many years is that more companies voted with their wallet that they wanted easy to use, delivered from a non-corporate type company, as opposed to the big software transactions. And so it was really this shift that happened slowly over time, whereas the lion's share of the new installs in the globe are done on platforms like Shopify, BigCommerce, and now Shopware. So that's a really important look back as to part of the heyday. And just to add on to the point a little bit more, Rob, the companies that were acquired actually used to be the perfect solution for the mid-market. Demandware served apparel really well. Hybris served manufacturing really well. Magento served the SMBs and the lower mid-market really well and allowed for customizations and personalizations. And when they were acquired, they were pulled out of their natural habitat into a different environment. And so that really fundamentally changed a lot about the commerce world we live in today. Anything to add to that, Rob?
Yeah, let me say that, for example, we lived in the Magento space quite a bit early in our company. And what happened when it was acquired is that prices rose, but also innovation dropped, right? So when you take an open source company like Magento, which a lot of innovation is driven by its community, and you put it into a software company like Adobe, right? They're looking to monetize their acquisition. So what did they do? They went up market. They have been accused by some in our ecosystem of essentially abandoning their core market, and they've had some real problems because of it. Similarly, a lot of companies have a start, restart kind of relationship with their customers. And then, the economics, which we're going to be talking about today, have completely changed. So I think you're spot on, Jason, and you've clearly lived it. You've actually been in it longer than me, although I may have a couple years on you. I didn't actually get into the e-commerce side of things until around 2015. So, but I've had a lot of experience on being a customer of e-commerce and seeing that change over time. So
Yep.
I think we've covered M&A actually, and I'll just jump ahead to the economics, right? We serve the SMB market, right? Typical customer is sitting right in that $40-100 million, couple $100 million business that's B2B primarily. But it doesn't matter what size merchant you are, whether you're a retailer or B2B, your economics, because of what Jason just described, is you're getting squeezed, right? So squeezed because some of our customers face price increases annually from the platform that they've chosen to go with, which has continuously increased their cost. Others, right, are on essentially an unflexible or kind of pricing methodology that takes a piece of their business. And in my company's customers being distributors, there isn't much margin to give up. So you have this choice. Do I undersize and go with a cheaper solution, or do I grow into it, right? Do I try to bite off something that is that's a little more than I want to pay, but I think it's got the features and the capabilities that I want in the future, right? We just worked with a client who made a decision to go with one of the more expensive solutions because they felt that they could grow into it. We'll see. But in the end, right, everyone making a decision right now around the math is doing real ROI calculations. They're trying to figure out what are the implications of making these choices and what are the benefits versus increased prices and not as much innovation. Anything to add, Jason?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I think you made good points. Just to, in order to really understand where we are today, I think it's helpful to take a look back as to how we got here, especially as it relates to pricing. And I think a $40 million merchant is the perfect place to start. There was enough pain in the system from the late 2010s in the cost of hosting and the cost of maintenance that it really, really drove people into the arms of Shopify, as an example. And just to be really clear, Shopify, BigCommerce, Adobe, SAP, these are world-class companies with amazing products and services. So it's not a knock on anyone for any of these comments. But what happened was the pain of hosting and the pain of maintenance drove people into the arms of Shopify. And what they did was absolutely brilliant. They took margins, platform margins that were at 2% as many as maybe 10-ish years ago, and they raced all the way down to 25 basis points. Okay. So what they did is they ran all the way to what would be the lowest price commerce would be delivered, and they got there first. And they also used the opportunity to tell people that the cost of maintenance and the cost of hosting can go away. Now, to reap those benefits, you got to use our payment engine. But oh, by the way, there's economic benefits of using our payment engine. So it's a master stroke of what they did to capitalize on the market.
Yeah.
If you're a $40 million merchant, you've got something that you can benefit from, and it's your scale. A $40 million merchant, there's probably 100,000, probably less than that in the whole, 10,000 companies that do $40 million online in the world. It's not a big number. You have economic negotiation power. And so today, if you're a $40 million merchant, you can get better rates on payments, you can get better rates on hosting, and you can negotiate better licensing rates because you are of that size. So I think that's an important distinction, that if you bought in the heyday and you're living today, you probably have the opportunity to revalue your providers.
Completely agreed. And as a quick aside, at that size, you also have some tremendous ability to negotiate on just about everything else in e-commerce. You can lower your box rates. You can change out your total capability of the last mile delivery systems. That size of a merchant has options today that it didn't recently. Yep. Right? Really recently.
I'd say the tipping point is really 20 to 25 million. Once you get above that, you actually have, you should be receiving economic benefits of your scale.
Absolutely. Totally agreed. Totally agreed. Okay. Have we addressed this? What do you say about the death to the monolith, Jason?
Well, this is a really interesting one, because again, having spent 25 years in e-commerce, what you realize if you live through it on the platform side, as I did at Digital River, we were constantly trying to re-architect our product, refactor our product, which was called global commerce at the time, because of the rapid amounts of change in e-commerce in the 2010s. Okay.
Yeah.
So to deliver against mobile commerce and social commerce and marketplaces and internationalization and trying to become headless and be API first and all of these different things, all of these trends in the industry had massive implications to platforms that are monolithic, because you have to change the whole thing and it becomes very, very painful for you to keep up with new innovation. And so the net result is actually the next point over. It's why platforms today love headless. They love it, right? Because they take the things they're bad at, like rendering content, and they've outsourced it to somebody else. Yeah. If you take an honest look at all of the releases for every commerce platform, pay attention to see if there's any new features actually coming out. Everybody talks about 100 new features, but they're really not new features. They're improvements. I think we've been a little liberal with the word new. And that's why there's an important moment in the e-commerce journey that those platforms that can deliver new features that actually change the way merchants run the store will win in the long term. But it's a byproduct of where we came from, is that the lion's share of the R&D has been dedicated to kind of refactoring and keeping up with all the innovation. And now they've effectively outsourced innovation to their app store and are trying to monetize payments.
Yeah, absolutely. Outsourcing innovation to the app store has some interesting implications, right? Often, right, my company is called on to do some integration work or to do some sort of development that might be some app related things. The point, however, is the rise of the number of apps, right? So recently there was a little kerfuffle, if you will, on the Forrester report that showed Shopify being one of the leading B2B commerce platforms. I'm not going to say that, money doesn't have power, but there's no one in my space that would say it's really a leader. But why are they in that space? If you're Shopify, it's because you have thousands and thousands and thousands of apps, right? So those plugins, those apps begin to give capabilities that aren't native to the software, but they also add a lot of unseen cost, right? So as they connect these things and claim it as part of their platform, there is a cost to every single one of those customizations that are standardized, but then have to be customized. So in the end, right, how affordable is it? A lot of people, as they look at the cost, don't add up and think about how many additional pieces do I have to plug in and what is the cost around those. But the outsourcing of that innovation, right, is really shown well by a number of the acquired companies, right, that we just named. More and more innovation isn't coming from the actual software vendor. It's really coming from folks that are building niche products and building them into products and charging for them.
Yeah, I think the bigger risk, though, as well. So, we got this death of the monolith. Everyone wants more microservices. Everyone wants a smaller software product. When you do that, you end up getting more of a larger reliance on apps. And so, because the core product does less, so you need to augment, and apps become the natural way to do it. So, in a lot of ways, it makes sense. The externalities of that are what we really should spend time talking about. We have a prospect who's got they're the market leader in a certain category. They have 50 sites running on a popular SaaS product. And the challenge is all of your data that happens on the e-commerce site is the platform's data. And so they can take that same amount of information and they can share it with their largest competitor. And so you get into this world where it's no longer, you lose control over your data, you lose control over your customers. And frankly, in the world of AI, where people are trying to build these large language models, are your customers and the experience they had on your brand contributing to somebody else's? It's a little bit like Facebook. If the product is free, you are the product, and we're starting to see a lot of that in the app stores and some of the apps that are in there, and the way that they behave and the information that they capture through the process. So I think there's a buyer beware moment that we're at right now in e-commerce as to who you choose to work with inside of the app store.
Without a doubt. And if you've got IP, it's a big issue. And fortunately, folks we work with have recognized that. They're even hesitant, right, around what choices to make, because they recognize that the IP they have is their differential, right? It's people, IP, and position in the market. And the IP and the people are the ones that are the most at risk for you as a business. But that brings in, right, so if you're a big software company, right, and you want to do business on the World Wide Web, and you hit in COVID and you realize your stores are being shut down, we saw a massive rise in online purchases. We saw a massive rise in building of new e-commerce stores. And because of that, right, there was a rush into a variety of software companies, and they enjoyed a push. But out of that, right, they've tied their payments to how much do you make across the site. They're coming back and demanding more money for it, even though hosting costs continue to drop. Data costs continue to drop. Speed across the internet increases, and yet doesn't have a price increase that matches. So even in these declining cost environments, the actual cost of these vendors, because there are not as many due to the M&A, due to the consolidation, and due to a few just being discontinued, then we would be able to say that they've got leverage, real leverage. And I think we're going to talk about that in our next episode, which kind of talks about the good and the bad in terms of costs. I want to say thank you to Jason. No, Jason, if you want to say something more, please do.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things. Pricing is really kind of near and dear to my heart. So the box is big software using their leverage. And I think it's important that we look at other markets to see where we've learned from this. And for those listening who has a Netflix account or a Disney Plus account as examples, if you do, my guess is you're paying more today than you are when you signed up. And the simple truth is there's a concept called terms of service where you agree that the provider can effectively change the terms of the service at any given time. And a lot of the multi-tenant SaaS providers have that same right. Okay. And so understanding leverage in a market like the video streaming wars, it was at a moment in time where Disney and Netflix realized they had leverage. So they use it. And the same thing is true in commerce. In January or February of this year, Shopify rolled out a price increase, going from, as I described earlier, running from all the way down to 25 basis points. Well, now it's 40 basis points. And they've increased the current price of using B2B, and they've increased the price of you using your own payments. So this is a moment where you give a platform or a company leverage, they will use it. And specifically, speaking about this is a big trend in our industry. Almost every commerce platform is thinking about how they monetize payments more. And so one of the trends you'll see is trying to make sure that you can get this rate or this offering if you utilize their payments. And Shopify, another great example of who's world-class and doing it the best, 70% of their revenue is tied to payments. The money they make in payments. Yeah. This is the example of McDonald's not being a burger company, but selling licensees as well as real estate. That's where McDonald's makes all their money. They sell burgers to make those other money. Shopify is the same way. They sell a platform so they can make money on payments. Okay. So this is a big trend. Shopify is leading the way. It's going to continue to happen.
Well, there is absolutely no doubt about that. And I'm really excited about what we've put together and what we're going to talk about next time. The good and the bad of costs. Thank you so much again, Jason, and we'll talk soon.